So why are the polls getting it all wrong? First Michigan, then Wisconsin, then Minnesota. Three major Democratic primaries, three very different results. And in every case, the polls missed something important. So if the polling model struggled there, what should we make of the numbers we're now seeing in Maine and Texas? Why do they keep missing? In Michigan, polls had progressive Abdul El-Sayed leading Haley Stevens by double digits in the Democratic Senate primary. He won by less than 1 percentage point. Then Wisconsin. Francesca Hong had been leading David Crowley by double digits, in some polling by more than 20 points. Crowley actually dropped out of the race because of the polling, and then he came back and beat Hong by just 0.4 percentage point. Then Minnesota gave us the opposite kind of miss. Peggy Flanagan was favored over Angie Craig, but the polling still suggested a much closer contest than the one the voters delivered on. Flanagan won 59-39, nearly 20 points. So the problem isn't that the polls are wrong in the same direction, it's that they keep struggling to measure the electorate that actually shows up. Part of that is turnout modeling. In Wisconsin, Crowley's campaign looked at who had actually voted in previous August primaries and found a much older electorate than some of the polling models were assuming. When his team reweighted the numbers to resemble those prior August voters, a comfortable Hong lead became essentially a toss-up. But there's another reason these Democratic primaries have been so difficult to poll. The Democratic establishment is fighting back against DSA or DSA-like candidates. In Michigan, establishment money and support consolidated behind Haley Stevens and turned what looked like an El-Sayed blowout into a race decided by less than 1 point. In Wisconsin, the establishment counterattack went even further. Crowley came back into the race after Sarah Rodriguez withdrew. Governor Tony Evers backed him. Moderates consolidated, and the anti-Hong vote finally had one place to land. The polls weren't simply trying to measure the difficult electorate. They're trying to measure a party whose voters were still moving while the poll was being taken. Minnesota reminds us that the establishment counterattack doesn't always work. Flanagan's progressive coalition was strong enough to overwhelm Craig by 20 points. And there may be one more problem: non-response bias. Younger, highly engaged progressive voters may simply be more likely to answer political surveys than some of the more moderate voters. If that's happening, pollsters have two problems at once. They have to figure out who is going to vote and whether the people answering their surveys accurately, whether they represent the voters in the first place. And now we get to the races that matter next. In Maine, Susan Collins may be stronger than the top-line polls suggest because her coalition has historically included independents, crossover voters who don't behave like a conventional Republican electorate. And in Texas, we have to ask whether the Democratic strength we're seeing around Talarico reflects a genuinely changing electorate, or whether some of these turnout and response problems are showing up again and again. We break it all down for you this week in Wait, Did the Dems Just 86 Hong? Only at ZooseTV.substack.com, and you can subscribe to us for free on YouTube at ZooseTV.